Next, we have a dual presentation, and it's with Judy Corley-Lay, and she's the director of the National Center for Pavement Preservation, and Kim Alexander, she's with Washington Department of Transportation.
Came up for this meeting to have the theme on building a pavement preservation culture. One of the topics that came up in some work done by the Pavement Preservation Expert Task Group was the importance of champions within agencies. I proposed to Kim, and she agreed, that we would do a little survey about champions and agencies, what they do and what their characteristics are. So I'm reporting the results. Hopefully you'll find them interesting. You can see the dark-colored states are the states that responded to the survey. It was a very short timeline, so, and I didn't follow up to say, please, I beg you to please answer the survey. But we did get a pretty broad section across the country, so it is interesting. Here are the particular names of the champions that were mentioned. It asked in the survey, who is the champion in your state? I think it's just kind of interesting to see who they are. John Selmer is just the recent past president of the Midwest Partnership. John Wilcoxon was a former chairman of the Southeast Partnership. You know, many of these champions have been very instrumental in the partnerships that you see. What positions did they hold within the state agencies? There wasn't, you kind of have an expectation that these are going to be pavement preservation engineer positions, but that's not really true. 4 of them were state road maintenance engineers. 3 of them were pavement management engineers. Only 2 were pavement preservation engineers, and then there were a variety of other positions as well. Each agency has its own particular setup, and so it can be in any position that interacts with those maintenance preservation functions. How long was a person in the champion role? 5 to 7 years was the most common, but there are people who have been at it for 20 years, so God bless them, is all I can say. But you can see it's kind of a mixed bag, but most of them 5 to 7 years. Listening to the presentations here, you could see that many of the agencies are reporting having been active in preservation for 20 years or 15 years. Well, if the average life duration of a champion is 5 to 7 years, that means you have to be into your 2nd or 3rd generation of champions. It was interesting to note that 5 of the agencies that responded said that they had had a champion, but they no longer had a champion. It is easy to lose that champion in an agency due to retirements or people accepting new positions. All different kinds of things can make that change, and it's easy to become an agency without a champion. 2 agencies reported that they had replaced a single champion with 2 or even 3 people doing the same work. So I guess that shows that those champions were in fact fairly heroic in what they were able to take on. I do want to mention that both Kentucky and Washington State both reported smooth transitions to the next generation of champions. Another thing that was interesting, we had 3 responses from Washington State. It's always reassuring when those 3 responses all indicated the exact same person as the champion. So what did the champions do? And I think this is really some of what makes a champion. They sold the concept to upper management. These people are not this is not necessarily coming from the top down. These are people kind of in the middle who are selling the program up to their leadership. They are advocating for their program, often having to fight against cuts in their budgets. There are reasons why it's very easy for agencies to cut into a maintenance budget as opposed to a construction budget. Nevertheless, the champion tends to at least voice the negative consequences of those cuts. They set goals and plans and methods to achieve their goals. They help establish dedicated funding, and dedicated funding is one of the 11 criteria about that make a pavement preservation program strong. And then they are open to trying new and innovative methods. Instead of just using, this is what we've always done, they are willing to try, well, let's try this new product, let's try the Cape Seal, let's go for the innovation grant, and so forth. So these things are really important. They did a lot more, though, that was really kind of activities that are in the weeds that you don't necessarily think of your champion as doing. Many of them really spent a lot of their time improving specifications and trying to make sure that their specifications were reviewed regularly with input from a variety of stakeholders. They did education and training, or arranged for education and training, developed policies. Those would be those guidelines to help the decentralized districts to make decisions that are consistent with the program. They addressed construction issues. They would be the one on the end of the phone saying, this is not working. And they would tend to be the person who would say, I will come there today and look and try and help us fix the problem so that the process doesn't get axed. They communicate the benefits for the network, both not just for the project, but for the network. And they use data to make the case. So they're using the pavement management data, they're using the pavement condition data, they're using the experience that they see around the state on how long the life extension is from various treatments. What are the characteristics of these superheroes? 8 responses all said they're good communicators. You know, if you're going to talk up to your leadership and, I don't want to say down, but also to your people who are doing the work on the ground, you really need to be able to communicate at all levels. 3 responses said they used data to tell the story, to show the results. They had good knowledge of treatments and their performance. They were persistent. And I think persistence in a state agency is really, really a critical and often underappreciated characteristic. They were willing to try new and innovative materials and processes, and they focused on specific preservation training, so lots of good stuff. They were big into team building. They were able to see the big picture. What is the network looking like? What is the net result over the whole system? They took personal interest in pavement preservation, often using their, quote, free time to work on issues in pavement preservation. They had a positive attitude, and they worked with others to promote preservation. So you would see many of the champions involved in the partnerships, also involved in regional research projects, all different kinds of initiatives around preservation. Some issues in finding that next generation of champion. I'm not going to read these to you, but some states actually have, by statute, an inability to nurture, to mentor a next generation champion in place. You have to wait until the person leaves the building before you can actually talk about who's going to take on the mantle. That is a significant negative in having a smooth transition, and both Kentucky and Washington have managed to not have those issues and have mentored people in what the champion does and how to continue the program. So that is really, really important. I also want to point out that lack of support within the agency is really a critical negative item. When you have your champion leave, usually safe from retirement, but maybe to a new position, and you also have a change in your leadership in your agency, that is a particularly dangerous situation because you don't have someone to speak the message to that new leadership to get them on board. Yeah, there are issues that need to be addressed. We need to promote the new ideas, the new materials. We also need to be looking at the next generation. It is very encouraging to look around this meeting and see that there is a variety of hair colors. Not everyone has the silver hair of long experience. It is very encouraging when there are younger people coming in and really speaking the language of preservation. DOT must be willing to fund positions. It may require reorganization. There's lots of issues that may occur in a particular agency. And then the last one, failures. These would be project failures. Increase stress on those champions because they're the ones who tend to be saying, yes, that happened, but this is what we're doing and this is why we need to stay the course and continue on this path. Got all different kinds of things. How can you make the search for a champion easier? Mentoring was far and away the best approach. That came up many, many times, but close behind it, support within the organization. A couple people from decentralized states mentioned that in looking for a champion, you need to not just look to central office, you need to look at your districts because your champions can in fact come from those outlying areas. Okay, so here's that look to the regional folks. It's very desirable if you can overlap people in the position before the champion vacates. That is, I already mentioned that's not legally possible in a large number of states. You need to look for people that have a lot of passion and a lot of enthusiasm. How do you ease the search? Well, develop contacts. These meetings are very, very helpful, and there are other meetings as well that make it easier to have contacts through industry, through other agencies. If you can institutionalize preservation in the agency, I think the Western states have been successful at that. Many other agencies nationally have had great difficulty, and I came from an agency where we thought we had it institutionalized, and we lost that leadership support, and it's a real struggle in North Carolina just to keep the program going. So you can lose that edge very quickly. I guess the last one, show them how you did it. I think these meetings are really key to that. Conclusions, well, champions are really, really important. They provide a real service to their agencies. They articulate both the benefits and the cost associated with letting up on your program. Agency support and mentoring and all of those things are really key to having smooth transitions. Thank you to the 20 people. How many people in the room actually took my little survey? 1, 2, thank you, personally, thank you. But we did get a really good turnout from the Rocky Mountain West. And I do appreciate that. Kim?
So I'll try to make it brief. I think Judy hit a lot of the things that we'd like to talk about, but I think one of the things for us in Washington, making sure that we share the knowledge with anybody who's willing to listen, be it a regional person, a maintenance person, somebody that's come up through the ranks but then left the pavement preservation or pavement management office, being able to bring them back in. Just personally, my history was with the Pavements office 15 years ago and did a couple of different gigs, worked in the maintenance office, so I really understood kind of from pavement preservation perspective from the maintenance folks, and then was able to come back into the Pavements office role. Being able to have that well-rounded background really does help. I think one of the biggest challenges, though, with government agencies is keeping people and mentoring people. We don't do a very good job of being able to keep somebody who's really good and really passionate about pavements, pavement preservation, or anything like that, and giving them promotions to keep them in that role. We tend to say, oh, I'm sorry, but you have to go somewhere else to get a promotion. But the cool thing about how Washington has been able to do that is they're willing to share that information within our regions, within our maintenance program, within basically anyone who's willing to listen, so that you have that and you build that culture throughout the DOT. And it may be just a couple people here and there, but being able to keep that culture going is really important. And I think the other thing that's really helped us within Washington State is creating policies so that you kind of have that place to stand and place to put your hat when you do come into that new position. You can say, okay, this has been our policy, this is why we do it, this is why it works, using data from the pavement management system to show that it works and all that kind of stuff. So keeping it short, I have lots of other things I could share, but I'll just keep it short at this point and turn it back over to Kevin unless there's any questions for Judy or I.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.